Welcome back to another episode of the Card Authority live show, episode 11 on a Thursday night. There's been a lot going on. I think it's a good time, as always, to bring in the number one ticket holder at St Kilda. That's, of course, my co-host, Adam Jenks, AJ, whatever you want to call him. How are you, my friend?
I'm good, AJ. Nice to see you again, mate.
And I see you're in your new office, which is looking very schmick with some very, very nice bits of cardboard there behind you.
Yeah, the den. We're in the card den as opposed to the study this week. So hopefully it turns out all right, this broadcast, and there's no technical dramas, and this is going to be the permanent spot. We're doing a bit of work on it. There you go. I'll get out of the way and you can see a little bit of the action there.
All right. It's enough. We've been broadcasting for 1:18, and it's already look at me time.
Still a work in progress.
Let's just settle down, all right? But It looks good, mate, and hopefully those new globes are going to fix the issues with you looking like Papa Giuseppe and Mario and all sorts of other crazy stuff. So, Anyway, obviously we've been off air for about 10 days now. A bit of an apology there. I did my back, so it's one of the first days I've been able to get back into my desk, which has been nice, but hasn't been great. What's been going on with you, mate? Obviously, you've been very busy in your den, but talk to me what else is going on in your world.
Yeah, so with the card world, I've been doing a bit of a conversion here. I might, maybe in a couple of weeks' time or even sooner, I might put out the before and after photos and journey of what this was. But this little room here that we're in right now was my pet project over the last couple of weeks. It was like a storage room and a spare laundry type of thing, basically. And the wife gave the blessing to convert it into a little card area. So for only literally a few $100s, I've managed to do this whole room up, the cabinets from IKEA and stuff. And there's a bit more furniture from IKEA that the computer's sitting on and just next to me and whatever. And I was pretty amazed, to be honest, because I've never showcased my cards before. My cards, literally, I receive them in the mail, and for the most part, they end up in put away into my storage area of my collection. So to have been able to put some on display is really excited me, and it's got the vibe going for me for sure for trading cards. It's been really uplifting. Aside from that, though, just been keeping a keen eye on the trading card markets and the hobby and everything that's been obviously transpiring. Big couple of weeks since we last broadcast with AFL and other sports and non-sport cards and stuff. Yeah,
it's been huge, and obviously, look, we'll touch on trade period a little bit later on, but there's obviously been some interesting things going on. I guess close to home, and probably a good way to just time before we have. We've certainly been a little bit Richmond focused over the last couple of weeks, but one little last thing from the grand final, we saw the release of the Dustin Martin highlight card, and I think we sort of touched on that after the grand final, and I think it was probably fair to assume that we were both thinking around the 600-700 mark we're going to get produced. I think Pendlebury was the record at 500, maybe something like that. Prior to that,
Pendles was 407. Let me have a quick look, and the other Dusty was 401.
Yeah.
So, there you go.
We thought it was going to be huge, and to say that we were slightly surprised when we saw the numbers on the back of our cards, a whopping 1,234, I think it is.
1233. I got one here. There you go. There you go, mate. You can have that if you really want it, AJ. Number 1152.
Well, I'm quite lucky that I was very well looked after by the guys at Select, and not that it's rigged at all, but I picked up the number 2 card, which was very, very fortunate, and I'm very thankful to the guys at Select. Obviously, there's no insider trading or no rigged or anything like that. I just I bought a lot of highlights, and it's nice to nice to get a little bit of a win. So, look, obviously, very, very successful. One thing, let's just talk a little bit about the financial metrics. I think, would it be fair to say that a lot of people would have bought bulk amounts of those cards, or more than they usually would have, because they would have foreseen a little bit of a flipping opportunity with that card?
Yeah, absolutely. People I think it's a combination of flipping, and it's also the type of card that a lot of non-Tigers collectors would be keen to have in their collection, short, medium, and even long term as well. It is obviously a highlight card. It's the only card currently that represents the triple Norm Smith and everything like that. So I definitely think, and as we saw probably from a lot of our viewers and a lot of the people that you and I interact with on a daily basis in the hobby, most people who would never buy highlights not from their team, went in and bought one or more of that card, and that's why we see such a high number on it. Pretty interesting though. Like, I think the debate is going both ways. What's going to happen with that? I think some people are saying, well, no, it holds its value regardless. Other people say at a numbering of 1,233, it's worth less than the retail primary market cost. So I don't know. Who knows? I don't know.
Well, I guess the interesting thing, and obviously you track a lot of data like I do as well, and there have been plenty that have sold for $30 on eBay. So whether that's the people that have missed out or people that wish they had more, clearly I think there was a bit of a sentiment that there wasn't going to be a huge amount of upside, but it's certainly shown the first guys to get them and put them on eBay have been able to make a little bit of money out of them if they wanted to do it.
Yeah, there you go. So I haven't been looking closely at it. I think the other thing as well is exactly what Paul Menis just said, and I do the same with highlights. I order multiple, trying to get a low number, and then to use the other ones for trades, basically. So I think that's spot on, where a lot of people would have been ordering, two or more to hopefully hit one low number, basically. So, yeah, there you go. Yeah, exactly what Paul said there.
Yeah, absolutely. But I guess then that creates a critical mass when you've got 1,000 cards out there, makes it even harder to get a low number. So, anyway, look, just interesting. I think on a commercial level, highlights in general have been a huge success for Select this year. I feel like the numbers that have been produced and purchased have been way more in previous years. I don't really keep track of the Rising Star ones, but I imagine that their numbers are probably up as well with Rowell and all that kind of stuff. So
Max King and Rowell.
Yeah. So I mean, that's interesting. It'll be interesting to see what they do next year, whether they keep that trend. And I think these special order limited release cards that they can print on the fly are obviously a good cash cow for them. So how they will try to integrate more of those in future will be interesting. Definitely interesting.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Dylan has just asked about cricket. Look, just to touch base on it, obviously we're very AFL focused because we've been in the middle of the season. We were literally talking before in our production meeting. We're going to have a really dedicated show on NBA and cricket and all those things once the sort of dust settles with AFL, which will probably be in the next couple of weeks. We were hoping to do a big grading show this week, but obviously all this crazy trade stuff that's happened has pushed that back another week. So don't worry, Dylan, we will have plenty about cricket in the coming weeks. Highlights obviously, hugely success. That was great. Dusty cards and Richmond cards. Have you kept much of an eye on where the marketplace has been for those over the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, so I don't know if anyone remembers, but last episode, which was almost 2 weeks ago now, I said that I was doing a bit of an experiment on behalf of Card Authority to see what was going to happen with the Dusty cards and if everything was going to inflate. And what I've done was I took one of the Dusty previous week's highlights, or from the 2 weeks earlier, whatever it was, and I bundled it up with a bunch of 2019 to 2020 base cards from the various series, and I put them up on eBay. And I will admit here, what I thought was going to happen, I was very wrong, and it did not happen. I thought to myself, okay, cool. Well, you got the Dusty highlight that's at a base level worth at the minimum $15 to $20, and then we've got these other base cards that are basically worthless, but people are paying, $2.99, $4.99, $7.99 a base card. My little lot of 6 cards here that I'm testing the market with is going to sell for like $40 to $60. What do you reckon it went for? Do you know what it went for?
No, but I'm guessing because you like to brag to me about your eBay wins, so I'm suspecting it wasn't a cheer.
No, it went for $13.34. Oh. So all 6 of my dusty cards went for less than the value of just a highlight. Unbelievable. Jeez, I did well there.
That's karma trying to rip off the very brave and faithful celebrating Richmond supporters. So
there you go.
All right, well, we'll move on from Richmond. We pretty much won't talk about Richmond for the rest of the show. Well, maybe we'll see what happens. But quickly, where do you see the marketplace at the moment? Obviously, Glenn's just asked a good question. It's a bit long for me to put on screen, but where do you see things at the moment? It feels like things are a little bit quieter. Is that a fair assumption?
Things have been a little bit quieter, I definitely think, over the last few weeks, and I think they are maybe starting to heat back up a little bit. In terms of just the flow and circulation of money and transactions, but also the amount of interaction that's taking place online. Sure, we can attribute the interaction to things that are actually also happening within football itself, but inevitably that sort of stuff leads to more cards being transacted. So a good example is today was trade day and trade night, and as a result, online activity in general is through the roof on all the pages, all the card pages, or the AFL and AFL card pages, because everyone's talking about it. As a result, the interaction levels go up, it gets more timeline hits, it starts to play into the algorithm and everything like that on Facebook. It then generates more interest, more people, and it ultimately results in more transactions taking place that would otherwise not happen. So I think you've got little things like that are fueling it and giving it a little kick every so often. But otherwise, I think, we expected the market to flatten out a bit and correct a little bit in certain areas. We've seen that happening. It continues to happen in some areas, but in other areas, things are going through the roof. Supremacy's never been more valuable and more costly than what it is right now to get certain cards or most cards from that series, and that still continues to go up and up. We've seen the rise of DPS cards, not just from this series, but now from all previous series, getting a significant rise, which to me is an indicator of a change in format of speculation, basically, or not just people collecting, but also a lot of speculation taking place from people and within the market that wouldn't have otherwise been AFL collectors or AFL participants in the past. So maybe it's more NBA guys and gamer guys and stuff like that who are moving in to speculate because maybe they're being priced out of those other markets and they're pricing in at a lower level into AFL. So I think, you've got to look at that and you've got to offset it. So everyone can sit there and go, okay, well, high flyers have dropped in price from this series and certain stuff have dropped in price from this series. But look what's happened to draft pick signatures from last year's dominance. You're literally looking at some cards. They're not just like double the price. Some of them are literally 20 times as much as what they were at the exact same time during the release last year. Like literally, there are cards that were $20 to $30 that are going for anywhere from $250 to $350, and there's not just one. There's a lot of them. So yeah.
So do you think that's a good, I guess, and we're going to talk a little bit about speculation later on, but is that a good vote of confidence for people that might be or have been holding the DPSs from this current series, that there might actually be a nice little return for them in 12 or 24 months?
I would think that signature cards in general, and especially draft or rookie signature cards, are going to play a huge part in the future of where the value lies with respect to AFL cards. I definitely think that is already, it's happening right now, and I think that's going to happen. It's going to be long term. Now, there's a counter argument right now about 2020 dominance DPSs is that, well, they started really high, they maintained high value for 2 to 3 weeks, and then in the last 4 weeks, they've really started, a lot of them have started to drop off on the higher end. Your Rantel, the Tigers and the Collingwoods and the Hawks and the big teams. And what that you can attribute that to, the fact that they're dropping off, is that one, the pre-existing collectors have got what they need for their sets, but also two, you've got some people taking profits who'd invested a lot into sealed stock and breaks and need return. But you also, because there's such a high volume of breaks, there's a different mentality at the moment at play as well from a percentage of the market, whereby people are hitting cards in breaks, they're receiving those and they're trying to turn them over as quick as possible to give themselves more bankroll to keep buying into breaks. So once again, there's a positive and a negative. You can look at, the glass half full, half empty situation absolutely applies to pricing at the moment. So prices on singles are maybe have a lot of downward pressure in certain areas, but what that's actually doing is it's because so much volume of stock is being moved. And what that's then doing is providing liquidity and money for people to reinvest back into brakes and buying other single cards. So there's no drop-off in the amount of money that's flowing around. It's just moving differently right now to what it was 4 weeks ago. I'm sorry, it's a long-winded answer, but I think we're going to see demand kick right back in just before Christmas, and I think we're seriously going to have a serious spike in demand that we're not used to over the summer period. People in AFL expect that summer drops off for cards. I don't think that's going to be the case. I actually think it's going to be the opposite of that. And I think, contrary to the fact that lockdowns are over and everything like that, people still don't have the capability to travel like they normally would during that summer period. And as a result, you're going to have a lot more people still sitting at home. And you're talking about, people who have kids, a 6-week period, which is a genuine holiday period where they've taken off work and stuff for that a long time as well. So I think there's going to be money there. People are bored. They think that they may not have money, but they will end up having more than what they have, and they'll want to spend it on something they can enjoy, and they want also the social interaction as well. There's my very long-winded answer.
Yeah, I was going to say, you could have just said yes. But look, no, that's totally spot on. And look, Scott, what you said about Rowell never dropped price, that's not actually true. It kind of went out of the gate and was $250, for a card. But I've definitely noticed in the last couple of weeks, you've been able to pick up a few of those cards for $200. You know what I mean? Sometimes $200 for a couple of cards. I think that there has been a little bit of a drop off, but that's certainly a card that's held its value. And I'd ask you that, argue the Will Day card has held its value, and the Tom Dow for Richmond has dropped a little bit. But as a general rule, they have all just sunk a little bit. So look, it'll be interesting. Watch that space with DPSs. I definitely know there's a lot of people that are trying to get sets and getting bulk orders or bulk collections of those cards. So it will be interesting to see what happens. Just to cover a couple of questions that are in it. Scott as well. Yes, there's second supremacy next year. We've talked about that a heap of times. We will cover that, indefinitely next year. There's no further information, but it'll most likely be a Series 3 or a Series 4 release later in the year. Probably September, did you say, Jenks? You reckon that's about when it'll come?
Oh, I reckon it'll be probably a bit later next year as well, just because of the impact that COVID will continue to have. I would say I wouldn't be expecting supremacy probably now until November next year, I reckon. I reckon they're going to hold it for a late release. I think the smart move probably for Select at a commercial level would be to really space out their releases next year and not fall into a lull period. Because I think as much as people were like, Select better not put anything else out after Dominance this year, it's a cash grab, it's this, it's that, it's everything else. I feel like where there's a lot of people sitting around, myself included, who are hanging for a release, and we're sitting here going, what's going to happen for the next 3 or 4 months? There's literally no projected card releases, so all we can do is singles and breaks, but breaks will eventually run out of stock. So
yeah, and that's a good thing. Fatigue is probably a word we've used a little bit, but I know, and I was talking to you about this privately, that I'm hanging for a new release of cards. So I guess it depends if they do 3 releases or 4 releases next year. It's probably gonna see where that lies. But supremacy we'll talk about next year. But our only advice, as we give every week, is if you're thinking about buying supremacy, it's a buyer's market out there. Start buying it up, because the prices are only going to go in one direction. Something you messaged me about the other day, there seems to be a real, and we talk about this a lot, the maturing of the marketplace. You've talked to me about that there's some really different ways money are now flying into the space. Do you want to just give the listeners or the viewers a little bit of an insight into that?
Yeah. I suppose I'll preface it in saying what I'm going to talk about with regards to the flow of money right now is on the broad spectrum of trading cards and collectible cards and sports trading cards and gaming trading cards. However, our domestic market within Australia, and whether that's AFL, NRL, or what happens with the NBA over here and everything else, we are still part of that global ecology and global economy of trading cards. Now, what is happening at the moment is there is significant moves being made at a much bigger level and a much more sophisticated level than where the collector base and the hobby base sits. And what's happening in that respect is major investment and major financial investment, and the recognition of trading cards, a real authoritative position of it, and globally recognized now that trading cards are becoming an alternate asset class investment. So as a result, you're starting to see public declarations from major equity funds, private investment funds, private equity funds, even some public funds all over the world, who are declaring that for the next calendar year, one of the key areas where they intend to put their capital and put their clients' money into for investment purposes is trading cards. So that is really interesting, because we already know there's been some big money moving in and some real sophisticated people. And there's no doubt the likes of Gary Vee and whatnot has really motivated a wealthier investor base to want to invest in trading cards. But when these huge funds that literally have billions, tens of billions, possibly some of them hundreds of billions of dollars of funds under management, declare that they're going to start taking positions in trading cards, we're not just you wouldn't be talking about like, oh, they're going to go, throw in $10 million, $5 million, $2 million. You're talking about companies, or not companies, funds that would take positions that would be very substantial. Like, and I think I'd said to you, like, my feedback to you was when I saw a tweet about a fund announcing it was in their top 6 buys for the next 12 months. Their top 6 investment trading cards was before art. Trading cards was number 4 and art was number 5, which is really interesting. But as I said to you, these are the type of players that can literally spend $100 million in a week and not blink. That's standard procedure. That's what they've got to do. So imagine you have funds, and multiple ones, coming in with that sort of money and sinking that sort of money into the market. And for them, it's all a volume game. It's a large scale volume. So it doesn't matter. They're not looking at it going, oh, we need to see a return tomorrow in this. They're buying it as an investment over a longer period of time. And what that's going to do is deplete the market of stock. So, collectors need to be really conscious of that. Cards that you collect could become a lot harder to find because there's much more significant competition, but there'll also be a lot more volatility in the market. So more cards will pop on and off the market at different times, and the value of what your current holding will go up significantly. So in the first case, it's going to be NBA, MLB, NFL, Pokemon, all those sorts of, or MTG and things like that, which are transacting already at a much larger scale. They'll be the first impacted. But make no mistake about it, it will filter through to all domestic markets, because there'll be domestic market operators that want to follow what the international players are doing as well.
I was going to say, it copies the trends from the US, especially things like that happen over there. And then obviously everywhere in the world, they want to continue. So, and look, Chris just asked a good question there. Do you think Captain Six will increase at all? Well, I think that's a perfect example of a card where if you're holding a bulk amount of these, or there is a bulk amount of them on the market, they can say, let's use, for example, we'll use Trent Cotchin, all right? He's a triple premiership captain. He's a Brownlow medalist. His captain's signature is never going to go down in value over a certain period of time, whether it's 5 years or 10 years. If he continues to win premierships or continues to win, whatever, all sorts of things, the demand for that card is going to be strong, and you've got a triple premiership captain's signature on a card. Someone like Patrick Cripps is another example. If he suddenly wins a Brownlow or Carlton win a flag, cards like that are only going to go up in value.
I think historically, you look at the historical data, and what happens is that Captain Sigs are one of the subsets that stand the test of time. You can go back and look at the previous releases of Captain signatures, and they're no cheaper than what they were. Like, they're all $1,000 cards, or you just can't get them. Look, we've already had a couple up for unicorns. We just cannot find the things. People are quick to forget. They're numbered to 50. They're captains of the club, and they're a subset that's only released like once a decade, basically. So they don't come out every year. It's not like a draft pick signature or something like that, or a certified sig or a player's ink sig where there's going to be a box hit. These are case hits that only get released every several years. They stand the test of time. They're long term. Like I see them as maintaining strong value over time. And as new people into the market, that's one of the subsets and one of the key cards. It's like, I'm still looking for a Robert Harvey. I'm still looking for a Lenny Hayes, Aaron Hamill. Well, I can't even find a Lenny Hayes, Aaron Hamill. I can find a Robert Harvey, but I don't want to pay the huge asking price on it, So they're worth a lot of money. I'll eventually have to pay.
Yeah, and Daniel, it's a good point. There is some stock that's buried, but what a lot of people don't know is that up to probably 2012, 2013, Select were throwing a lot of stock out. They would go and print 500 cases. They would sell 300 of them, and 2 years later, they would literally go and take them down to the tip. So there is a lot of stock that just doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, well, and also, Card Zone actually has a really significant amount of the old sealed stock. Select did a deal with Steve Wang, who owns Card Zone, and JLH Holdings, which is the distribution company as well. A lot of people may not actually realise this. A lot of people look at Card Zone on eBay and just like, oh, these guys are so expensive, this is crazy, whatever. People need to actually look at them in a different way. If Card Zone and Steve Wang did not prop up the market for 20 years of when it was running shit, we wouldn't even have trading cards where they are right now. That bloke went and invested in buying up all that dead stock and all that shit and still maintaining high prices on then the secondary market on eBay. He kept the hobby alive. I'm telling you now, like I feel very strongly about this, that he literally almost single-handedly maintained a market that would have just collapsed. It would have instantly collapsed if he didn't do it. And no doubt he's seeing the rewards of that right now with this price of sealed stock and the demand going through the roof. He would have been picking it up really cheap, all that dead stock, but he was also stuck sitting on it in warehousing for 10, 15, 20 years, whilst it was worthless and worth nothing. So, yeah, like huge credit. And for those who don't know Steve and Card Zone, an absolute mainstay of the hobby for decades. I think for since 1990, late 80s, early 90s, something like that he's been around for. And Card Zone in Melbourne, one of the few physical stores that has stood the test of time as well. So
yeah, for sure. And look, we'll move through these questions. Dylan, look, a Premiership predictor set's going to be worth anything. Maybe, obviously, the winning team is going to hold a little bit of value, but if you're holding a St Kilda from 2020, I mean, that card's worth nothing. So, I mean, yeah, if you're talking about full sets of all the teams, those things aren't going to hold that much value.
You got to remember one thing to keep in mind as well, though, AJ, is that people need them for master sets and team sets. And what I found quite interesting, and there's still one that I'm missing. Actually, I can't remember which year it is. It's in my list, but as I've gone through that process of trying to put my master sets in, a select master set for St Kilda together, some of the cards that I found either more expensive than I expected or harder to find than I expected were actually the old Premiership predictors and rookie cards, like the certain types of rookies that were released back in the day as well, which is really interesting. And that's something for people to keep in mind too. Anyone that is thinking about going down the route of trying to do like a full master team set and backlogging it, you're going to find that a lot of the real base level inserts or high numbered inserts are actually harder than the super high end cards to find. So
I would agree, because it's human mentality that you have these, let's call them rubbish cards or shit cards. They either go in the bin or they just get discarded or whatever. And I can speak from my own experience of trying to track down some Richmond cards only from 6-7 years ago. And I've got some really obscure, basically common cards that I can't find. So, but I guess more with price rise though, a St Kilda Premiership predictor from 2012 is not going to suddenly become $1,000 card. It's
correct. Yeah, that would happen.
it might become a $50 or $100 card because people can't find them, but they're not gonna have the same sort of upside as a DPS or a Captain Sig or something like that.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
So look, interesting times, and I think that we talk so much about the marketplace maturing and sophisticated money coming in and all that kind of stuff. Seeing that some of those big moves are happening over in America, I think is very positive signs for the Australian marketplace in the long term.
Yeah.
Anyway, so look, let's we're going to cover a heap of stuff, as I said at the top of the show, about NBA and Pokemon and cricket and all those things over the coming weeks when AFL's kind of quiet. So if you've got questions about that, certainly send them through. Our new website will be live tomorrow, so you will be able to submit some stuff there if you do need to ask us any questions or post unicorns or all that kind of stuff. And also, if you're watching us on YouTube or iTunes or listening or whatever, that kind of stuff, give us a subscribe, push the subscribe button, whatever you need to do, and tell your friends. Anyway, let's move on to sort of what we wanted to talk about tonight. And we're putting this under the banner of Cardboard School because I guess this is a little bit about speculation, about whether you want to speculate on buying cards for players that have moved to new teams, or perhaps you want to get rid of some cards that are part of your set, things like that. Obviously, there's been a whole range of moves today. More than I can't really remember a trade period where so many, I wouldn't say premium players, but middle tier to higher tier players have made movement. So we're going to work through them all, and the questions are coming through, and we will get to them all. But let's start with someone like Ben Brown. So Ben Brown was playing, obviously, for North Melbourne. He was arguably one of the brand name players in most of the cards for the Select Series in the last couple of years. I mean, he's got a dominance, he's got an influential, he's got a showstopper, which are premium cards numbered to 40 or 60. What happens to his cards, Janks, now that he's moved to Melbourne? Is there going to be a bump or is there going to be a dump?
So I think from a general perspective, contrary to what people think might happen, people who own those cards already most likely keep those cards unless they have multiples of them. So if you're a North Melbourne collector, you still need his card in your collection. You're not just going to go sell your dominance or your influential or whatever it is. You still need it within your collection. Then if there's people that collected him as a player, will they still retain those cards as well? So I don't think you see this flood of his previous North Melbourne cards come onto the market that then massively devalues them. I just don't really see that happening. As I said, there might be people that have multiples that now decide they don't want the multiple anymore, and that's obviously going to cause downward price pressure on it. But aside from that, I don't see that happening from a general perspective. Now, with regards to him going across to the Ds, well, I would say that it's almost like the Ds from a collector base and a supporter base sort of thing, and performance and everything probably hit their bottom. The worst their cards were ever going to perform probably got hit about 6 to 9 months ago, 9 to 12 months ago. Similar timing probably to where St Kilda was, or maybe a year behind where St Kilda was. So as a result of that, we're already seeing Melbourne cards and the level of participation with respect to collectors in Melbourne cards has gone up significantly this year. It hasn't just gone up with everything else going up. It's still gone up as an individual team probably by 30% or something. So it's already up well and truly off the historic lows in that sense. I think his cards at Melbourne will be worth equally as much as they are at North Melbourne, if not potentially more. North cards seem to be holding or declining, whereas Demons cards are on the rise based on the club's performance, really.
Yep. Okay. Fair call. What
do you think?
I think it's a pump, and I guess we can probably use this pump or dump for most of these players that we're going to talk about. I think it's an upgrade for Ben. I think North Melbourne are probably in the lower tier of clubs for collector base and value. I would say Melbourne is the top of the bottom or the bottom of the middle, somewhere like that. So I think there's going to be a new generation of fans. If he's a good player, if he suddenly starts kicking 70 goals a year at Melbourne, they're going to want to start buying his cards if you're a Ben Brown collector. yeah, I think it's a pump for him in particular.
Yeah, I suppose one of the big contributing factors as well that we have to point out here is that not all people collect the players that come to their club's previous cards. So, like for me, for instance, perfect example. I'm a St Kilda collector, a team set collector, but my set parameters determine that I only collect cards in either St Kilda jumpers or non-club jumpers. So as a result of that, obviously Higgins, who's come across to the Saints, I need to get his Future Force cards, but I don't want his draft pick signature or any Richmond cards of his. They don't go into my set. Only his Future Force cards go into my set. So here's the thing: there may not be a heap of Melbourne people that want Ben Brown's North Melbourne cards, but there also might be a bunch that it's defined as part of their collection and collecting, and that they need to get them. So, yeah, I see it as an up. I see it as maintain or up. Like, I don't see it going backwards at all.
Yep, and the Future Force red and blues and golds and greens and all that kind of stuff, what I think that they will be generally a pump for most of these players we talk about today, because there's going to be, as you just explained about Jack Higgins, there's going to be new team set collectors that are going to want to have those players' cards in their set, which create more demand on those low number cards or short run cards. I think they're 25 for the greens maybe and 40 for the gold or something like that. So there's not a lot of those cards anyway. So I think they will they will continue to pump those sorts of cards.
Yeah.
Sean Higgins, who goes from North Melbourne to Geelong. Now obviously Sean Higgins is a little bit of a journeyman. He has been at a few clubs. Does suddenly his cards get a little bit of value now? And in a new Collingwood jersey, are they going to have a little bit more value now that he's gone from North Melbourne to Geelong?
So I don't necessarily think his older cards get a significant increase. I don't think they go backwards at all. I definitely don't think they go backwards. I think they maintain. Again, the North collectors need them in their collections. Going to Geelong is going to then give him a whole new collector base moving forward of his cards in Geelong colours. And then again, it's like based on performance. If all of a sudden he has a fantastic year 2021 at Geelong, a whole bunch of Geelong people may turn around and go, you know what, I fucking love this guy. I want a PC Higgins now. I'm going to go backlog his whole collection.
Yeah.
So yeah.
All right, so someone like Fantasia going from Essendon to Port, we've discussed over the last couple of weeks that obviously Essendon cards have really found themselves in a little bit of a hole. They're a Big Four Melbourne club. They really should be in the top echelon of collectability, I guess, if that's the right word. Someone like Fantasia moving to Port, does that open up a new realm of value for his cards?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, again, most people would, under normal circumstances would go, Essendon to Port Adelaide going down in value. It's Port to this, that, the other. Well, those people aren't tracking the market correctly, because Port is one of the biggest value increases, on a per capita basis in terms of their cards over the last 12 months. Port is the team in terms of trading cards, St Kilda to an extent as well, but Port has really, really broken out. Their cards have significantly increased in value, and it's based on the fact that there are a lot more collectors. The collectors have become more passionate based on field performance as well, and the team is performing well, which means you're getting that conversion of more supporter base into collector base. And then you take that, you look at Fantasia. Essendon's been low. The cards, but you've been able to get the prices you can get Essendon cards at, or have been able to get Essendon cards at in 2020 is probably disproportionate on the low side to everything else, or to most other things. So therefore, they've been really actually good buying value. But yeah, I actually think Fantasia, coupled with the fact that Port is on a hot run at the moment with a good informed team, means he could end up with, he's not just going to get collected by Port people, he could end up with a cult following off the back of his performance over the next couple of years there. And again, it brings that realm of going and backlogging all his cards. So again, I see him as upside only. I don't see downside on Fantasia.
Interesting one. So Isaac Smith, who obviously has been at Hawthorn cards are definitely in that top echelon of collectability. I'm using that word. I'm sure it's bad, but whatever. Hawthorn cards are expensive, in demand, all that kind of stuff. Now that he goes to Geelong, where do you think that goes with his cards? Because I think this is one of the situations where, g'day Cherry, one of these guys that I actually think this is going to hurt his value of his cards.
I tend to agree. I'm surprised you said that. I thought I was going to say that and you were going to be, you disagree with it. That's really interesting. I'm on the same page with you there. Isaac Smith cards, because they've been Hawthorn cards, have always been historically high in value because there's so much demand at a team collector level for the Hawks, obviously, and they used to be much better than what they were this year. So their cards have actually held up pretty well, even whilst they've been performing horribly on field. I think his cards are actually going to go down in value. I think a lot of people may expect they would maintain, but Geelong has a good collector base, but it's nowhere near the strength of Hawthorn. Yep. And I actually think a Geelong Isaac Smith card next year will be worth less money than the Hawthorn equivalents were worth. Yep. And that the Hawthorn equivalents may go down maybe 10 to 20%, but I don't see any more than that. I can't see them dropping anything significantly. I don't see them being mass collected by Hawks people anymore if they ever were, and therefore that's maybe a 10 to 20% thing.
Okay, so let's now look at another example, Jeremy Cameron. So historically, Jeremy Cameron cards have been worth peanuts. You look at his influential card, which is numbered to 40, and realistically that's a $150 card. Now slap a Geelong jumper on him, down to Victoria or Melbourne or whatever you want to call it. What do you think is going to happen to his cards?
Yeah, I think his cards will see a significant increase in value. It will be, obviously, it'll really probably start with the Geelong cards that come out for him if they do come out in 2021. We'll have an increased value straight off the bat, again, just based purely on collector base. But I also think that there will be, it's for him to go to a club like Geelong, I think it's a huge confidence booster for your general person that follows football. And I think people will probably agree that playing in a powerhouse side like that, notwithstanding GWS obviously did very well in 2019, but it's different. Like, you're talking about an experienced powerhouse club like Geelong with a very long history and culture. Jeremy Cameron, if he fits in well and plays well, he can once again become a club sort of hero there with a huge following. But I also think that there's going to be other people now, non-GWS, non-Geelong people that would be more interested in Jeremy Cameron's cards because they expect him although being a more senior player, he's got probably a really good outlook the next couple of years as well.
Absolutely, and I think a really good parallel to the Jeremy Cameron example is what happened with Tom Lynch at Richmond. You could, and apologies, Connor, because I know he's your love child, but his Gold Coast signature cards and patch cards, you could pick up for a couple of $100. They were not worth a lot. Fast forward 2 years or 3 years and a couple of premierships, you've got Tom Lynch influential cards that are worth $1,200, $1,300 and really desirable and really hard to find. So I kind of feel like that's the blueprint of what might happen to Jeremy Cameron.
Absolutely. And, Tom Lynch, you look at Tom Lynch's certified patches, they're the only ones from basically a shit team that buck the trend, and it's because so many Richmond collectors wanted those Gold Coast patches of his. Those Gold Coast patches were pricing, in the 400 to 600 range in any given week or month, whereas the mid-range Victorian teams were only in the 250 to 350 range. You know what I mean? Yep. So Tom Lynch was the one card in the whole series of patches that bucks the price trend of a Gold Coast card. And you can look, the same shit applies with Gary Ablett. He was at Gold Coast as well. Look at the value of his Gold Coast cards, although he's a bit of a cult figure. But yeah, I definitely think, we're going to see it with Jeremy Cameron here, for sure.
Cool. And look, obviously now, and I know we're getting messages coming through about Collingwood. We're about to talk about them. So relax, Daniel, and whoever it is, we're going to get to them. Don't worry. So as an overall thing, do you think now Select will make, because we've talked about this a little bit before, that Select make the decision on who they're going to be on their cards, sometimes 9 months in advance. So maybe the first release and the second release next year might already have identified players. Do you think and let's use Jeremy Cameron for example again, is there a chance we won't see him on cards wearing a Geelong top because there just isn't going to be the photos and there isn't the stock for it?
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think we'll see him on cards for Footy Star Series or whatever Series 1 is next year. I definitely don't think the trade players will be in that series, and therefore they will probably not be in Prestige if they do Prestige again. We'll have to wait for Series 2 before we see them. I was impressed this year that in Series 2 this year, in Dominance, they managed to get a lot of the new players or players that didn't even play last year into the cards, so which means they managed to acquire some images from rounds 1 to 3, basically.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I definitely don't think for Series 1, but I would like to think for Series 2 we'll see the new players in new colours, yeah.
Okay, but then could that also, going back to if you're starting to fall in love with a player that's at your club, does that mean perhaps create some demand on Jeremy Cameron cards because, players can't or people can't get their fix on those cards in those first couple of series because they're not going to be around? Could that be a factor at all?
Possibly, yeah. That's an interesting one to look at. I suppose time will tell.
Yeah, cool. So look, now we'll move to some of the big names because I know everyone's frothing to hear about it. I want to talk about Tom Phillips first. So Tom Phillips I would probably call a middle-tier player at Collingwood. I know a fair bit about him from my real job with data. He's a real accumulator on some nights. He doesn't have a huge presence in trading cards to date. I mean, I think he had a green in Prestige from memory. He maybe has a holo, but I mean, he's never been on any of the top end cards.
He's got a sig. I think does he have a certified sig or something like that?
Maybe. I'm sure someone will tell us in the chat, but he doesn't have a huge presence. Now that he moves to a club like Hawthorn, do you suddenly see a player like that who's effectively, I guess, going into the Isaac Smith role? Does he get a bigger profile now with cards that he's come across?
Great. That's a really, really interesting point, actually. Now that you're saying it would make sense. Doesn't have a high profile at Collingwood, so therefore underperforms in terms of card value, moves to a Hawthorn, performs well at the club, elevates his status as a player within the league and increases his value at Hawthorn. I definitely see that. That's possible. It's all going to come down to on-field performance for him. Because he's not currently like a franchise or marquee type player, they're not exactly going to be using Tom Phillips on their marketing first up, for example. Maybe by the end of the season, if he's had a really good season, he could become a real face-up franchise player for the club. And therefore, his value as a player and therefore his value of cards in Hawthorn colours would be more valuable than what they would have been when he was at Collingwood. So, it could happen. Could happen.
Okay. And thank you, David Harty. 2019 Dom Sig for Phillips. So thanks for that. Okay, let's look at Adam Treloar. So Collingwood have been absolutely gutted, losing, 3 arguably starting 22 players. Treloar has been one of the main features on Collingwood cards since he has joined the club. There's a Supremacy booklet. There's a Footy's Finest. What else might there be? He's on a lot of cards. Anyway, what happens now, first of all, on a Collingwood scale? Do Collingwood supporters get shitty that they might have spent $2,500 on a Treloar booklet and he doesn't even play for the club anymore? What happens to the value of his cards to Collingwood collectors and other collectors that might hold it as trade bait or something like that?
It's a really interesting one, and time's going to tell what's going to happen here. My gut feeling is we're not going to see any real significant drop off. We might see some protest selling, basically, where like protest selling, like protest voting, where you don't care about the other party. You're just voting against someone in particular. So I would call it almost protest selling. There you go. We may have just coined the new word here.
Probably.
So I see some potential protest selling if it's going to take place at all, but it may not, whereby Collingwood people are angry at the situation and he's going to another club. However, I feel like Collingwood people are more pissed off at the moment at what the club has done to him.
Yep.
I think he has. There's no indiscretion there or anything like that. His on-field performance speaks for itself. The bloke's he's elite.
Yep.
If he's not considered elite yet in the categories, I'm sure he will be.
Oh, he is. He's ranked number one across so many metrics for 2020. Yeah.
So he's elite. He's a superstar. If I was a Collingwood collector and I had Adam Treloar booklets and Footy's Finest and shit like that, I would still be stoked to have those cards. One, I know I need them in my collection, but two, they're really great cards for a really fantastic player. He did his service for the club. At the time the cards were created, he was a fantastic clubman and a great player for that club. If he happens to be at a future club there that's different, then it doesn't matter. I don't see that as a reason for Collingwood people to sell off those cards.
Well, I asked this, and look, tread carefully here with your response, but we spoke about a specific Adam Treloar card during the week, and it was a few other issues we were talking about, but the example that we saw was that there was a Treloar Footy's Finest on one of the sites for sale, and it couldn't get any bites at a dollar figure that we both agreed 6 months ago would have snapped sold at 20, 25, 30% more. That was around the time when they were saying that Treloar was probably going to get moved on. Is that any kind of an indicator, or do you think that's just more market?
I think it's probably a combination of market and a bit of the unknown as well, because there's been so much getting swirled around and so many things being talked about and thrown around. I think people have been scared of going a few of these cards because they wanted to see what would happen, where the player would go and how the card would settle. You got to remember, Treloar's going to the Dogs here, who are a team that are only rising right now.
Yep.
Look at what they've just picked up. They're going to be even better in 2021 than what they were in 2020, and they were very competitive in 2020. They got to, look at the superstars in the team still, regardless of whatever. Like, look at the superstars they already have in the team: Bontempelli, Bailey Smith, Aaron Norton. This is a serious team on paper. So the Bulldogs collectors are going to be just, so excited to have Adam Treloar come to their club. Maybe they're the ones that are actually going to hold the price value for his cards up, because they're all going to want his cards as well. Again, it's a determination whether the Bulldogs people want his older Collingwood cards or they only want the new cards. You know what I mean? There you go. Capitan's just commented there. And I think it was Dean Rolph had something just up on the screen before about saying how he'd sold off. So Dean's a Carlton man and he sold off all his Betts and Gibbs. But Dean, let me ask the question, and please throw it in the comments. Because Eddie ended up coming back to Carlton, do you regret selling off all your cards then? And just so everyone knows, full disclosure, because we're talking about Eddie Betts, I have his 01 Future Hall of Fame. So if anyone, big Adelaide people or anyone else want that card, come
settle down. This is not an eBay marketplace, all right?
No, I want to trade. I'm looking for trades. But seriously, Dean, if you could let us know, I'd love to know, how, genuinely, are you when Eddie came back to the club, were you like, wow, I should never have sold his cards? And Gibbs is obviously not back at the club, so
no. Well, Gibbs is on the punt. Okay, so the Treloar card we've covered, and I think, look, I don't know if I 100% agree. I think there will be a little bit of a decline in those prices. I guess time will tell. It's now his third club. I can't even remember, was he on any GWS cards? I don't even recall any, you know what I mean?
I'll be honest with you, until you just said it now, I didn't even recall that he played for GWS.
Yeah. So
he's been such a hot collected player at Collingwood. I feel like if you were sitting on a heap of his cards, why would you dump him? If you had a whole bunch of Treloar Footy Finest cards, what benefit is there to getting rid of him? That is a sick card with a sick player.
Okay, but you just touched on something there. So if no one would, he was hotly collected as soon as he went to Collingwood. Was he hotly collected because he was at Collingwood or because he was a good player? I'd argue he was still the same player when he was at GWS.
Probably. So maybe, I don't know. Someone tell us. I'd love if anyone knows if he did have what GWS cards he had, and did people actually collect them, and what happened to his cards when he went from GWS to Collingwood? Did it like steroid up 300%, or was it just a bit of an increase to Collingwood level sort of thing? If anyone knows, feel free to chime in.
So the next one we're going to move on to, and look, there's been a few comments about this, is Stephenson or Stephenson, or however you want to pronounce it, Stephenson. Stevo. So, we don't need to, I don't even need to put data to this. Everyone knows he's had a pretty average year, all that kind of stuff. How does that now affect his price of cards now that he's heading to North Melbourne, who arguably, as we've said many times, is not a highly collectible team? What happens to the price of his showstopper?
The Stephenson one's a really interesting one. This is the one that I have the most concerns with in terms of volatility of what's going to happen with his cards. But I think it's going to be very particular cards of his that are impacted, to be honest. And I don't think it's the ones in Collingwood colours, because either the print runs are so short that the set collectors outweigh the supply in terms of numbering, or he's got certain cards that were collected by multiple people in quantity, and those people know that they shouldn't dump. If they dump the market, they'll kill his card value. And a credit to a lot of the Pies collectors, a lot of the most experienced and long-term collectors within our marketplace and within the hobby for AFL domestically are some of the most astute collectors, and long-term collectors, the Collingwood guys. And I think there's some really smart operators there who understand what could happen here, and I think they're smart enough to not let it happen here, basically. Where I think the cards are impacted, because Stephenson cards have always been massively overinflated. Well, not overinflated. The price has been relative to what the demand has been. People really love the bloke. They thought he's a genuine superstar.
Collingwood tax, same as Richmond tax.
Yeah, there you go. Collingwood tax, Richmond tax, whatever it is.
Yep.
The tax, apparently apparent taxation. But I think it's his Future Force cards where are going to take the real... If anything's going to take a hit, it's not the Pies cards so much, it's his Future Force ones. I think it's...
Okay, well...
North Melbourne people won't pay the same price for a Jaidyn Stephenson Future Force card as what a Collingwood collector would. And I don't think a North person ever will. And as a result of that, when they do pop up on the market, if and when they pop up on the market, they're not going to achieve the same price as they were. And the sellers are going to have to come down, or there's a stalemate. The sellers, come down in price. A purchase is done at a lower price it was previously, and that might be the market signal.
Well, how's this? And this is probably going against a little bit of what I was saying, thinking his cards are going to go to shit. What about if he goes to North Melbourne, arguably a club that is at the bottom, in trouble, no coach, all that kind of stuff, and he just fucking lights it up? Becomes the
cult hero, the next fucking Dusty, the Dusty of North Melbourne.
Absolutely. What happens if he does that? He becomes this game breaker. He kicks 50 goals a year. He actually decides not to be shit like he has been this year. And then he just becomes like the hot property in North Melbourne. Can that actually work in reverse, and suddenly his Collingwood cards get a huge bump? Like, we're talking about a guy that's only been playing for, 3 years, 4 years. He's still so young.
Yeah, I think here's the thing. I think the Collingwood cards, the Jaidyn Stephenson Collingwood cards, have already priced in his future success to an extent, or had priced in his future success. So I hear what you're saying, and from a sentiment perspective, I totally agree. I agree with that broad position, but I feel like it's like a stock market with someone like Jaidyn Stephenson, where he was heavily speculated on, but his expected future performance is priced into the current value. So it was like a share where someone's going, okay, it's not about what the company's doing now. The share price reflects where they're going to be in 5 years' time.
Yep.
Or the share price data's coming out to the market tomorrow, the company's announcing their profit and loss tomorrow, today's share price has already factored that in. And I feel like with Stevo, that's the type of play that it was factored in already. So I hear what you're saying. I don't think in this case that there's a huge amount of upside. I think that North Melbourne collectors, if they see him as a superstar, they could get to the level of paying the same sort of money for his cards, but I don't see how it could go more, sort of thing. It could go as high as a Wayne Carey, that's what sort of thing,
Yeah, and look, let's be honest, there's fucking nobody at North Melbourne. He is going to be a feature on North Melbourne cards over the next couple of years. Because there's no one else. There's no Ben Brown there anymore. There's no Sean Higgins. Ben Cunnington's like 73 years old. Like, he's literally, there's Simpkin, there's Stephenson, there's, he's going to be on supremacy next year for North Melbourne. 100%. Yeah. So, look, yes, everyone's a bit salty. Yeah, funny, Luke. Look, there's a few people, obviously, and look, AFL is very tribal. We're very much team collectors opposed to player collectors like they are in NBA. I think there's obviously a few Collingwood supporters that would be very upset about what happened today. Their club is being gutted. I've got one more for you, right? We've covered those, and this one is actually without notice, so I haven't told you about this. How would you feel if you were a Josh Dunkley collector who clearly was looking like he had one foot in the door at Essendon, and they couldn't get the deal done because Essendon are, fucktards is probably the only right word to use. How would you feel about buying Josh Dunkley cards next year in a doggies jumper, knowing full well he is a 60 to 70% chance of being out the door? Can't get midfield time, and now they've just brought in a pure midfielder in Treloar. His role is not going to improve. I know there's a guy, Matty Kennedy, he loves Dunkley. What is going to happen to someone like Dunkley?
So Dunkley's an interesting situation. I don't know. Look, I obviously watch a lot of footy. I don't know as much of the statistics as my 6-year-old son Dylan does, though, because he's right on it. He keeps me up to date. But listen, all I can judge it on is from people that I know. I'm going to give a massive shout out to my man Aaron Capitan. My man Aaron Capitan out there, because Capitan, once the Capitans came to the footy with me, Aaron and his brother came along to a Saints Bulldogs game, and I learnt that game about who Dunkley was, and that Dunkley was actually really, really popular amongst the supporter base. And then this year, obviously, it was this year, and his name was thrown around a bit more in the commentary and everything. But I don't know. As far as I knew, as an outsider, I thought he was one of the better players at the club, or one of the more highly touted players of the future at the club. And it's a very awkward situation. However, I feel like, I don't know, I reckon the doggies supporters back that player, and the collectors will keep collecting him in the hope that he doesn't end up leaving the club.
Jonathan, I'll happily take you a wager on that. I think there is zero chance Dunkley is going to be the patch booklet. Zero chance.
If the patch booklet isn't a veteran, do you reckon it would be the Bont?
Yeah, or McRae.
Or McRae. Yeah. I didn't mention McRae before. Bulldogs have got a good list, don't they?
Yeah. I'd say McRae or the Bont for sure. Or if they want to go real, like, cult kind of stuff, it might be Bailey Smith. Okay. Well, look, obviously, there's heaps of questions coming through. There's so many unknowns, a lot of it is speculation. All supporters that have lost players today, things do get better. Don't worry. Footy will be around next year. You'll be able to cheer and you'll find new heroes at your club.
I think Essendon got Nick Hind from St Kilda. Congratulations.
McRae. And definitely, Aaron, I would say, there's every chance it'll be the Bond. That'll be almost a lock. All right, well, look, let's move into everyone's favourite subject, and obviously my back's starting to play up, so we won't run this too long. But unicorn hunting, we've been a little bit quiet on the ranch this week. Haven't had a lot of chance to track much stuff down. We are looking for Jai Simpkin Future Franchise 01 Supremacy card still from last show. So we will have the details of that up on the website. So if you do know where the 01 Jai Simpkin Future Franchise Supremacy card is, make sure you give us a yell. But this week, we are going back again to 2018, and this is not the first time we've looked for this subset. We are looking for a Paddy Ryder Brownlow predictor. Now, I'll just check my notes. I believe it's the Platinum we're looking for.
Yeah, Platinum version. Very hard. Again, this just shows you everyone undervalues or misrepresents these, the Platinum predictors that are numbered to 40 or 50 or 60 this time around. A couple of years goes by and you can't find the things. I'm still missing a couple in my master set as well. They just never turn up. They just don't pop up anywhere.
I always feel like we need to go and buy a couple of cases of 2018 Footy Stars, crack them open at Card Authority headquarters, and we're probably going to land about half a dozen unicorns for people that all want these bloody predictors. Yeah, maybe we'll all just do a big group break or something like that. So look, if anyone has a Paddy Ryder Platinum Brownlow predictor from 2018, it's a Footy Stars card, give us a yell. Selwyn Child is looking for it. We'll obviously look after you. He'll either buy it or we can do a trade. And as always, we're always happy to help facilitate any of that. We're not paying for it, but we will help. If any of you guys have got it out there, please make sure you give us a yell. 2018 from Select Footy Stars, Brownlow predictor, Paddy Ryder. Come on, guys, let's do it. It's been a long 10 days. Scott's actually saying he thinks his mate's got one. All right, beautiful. We'll let us know. Shoot us a message on the side or to either of us personally, and we will certainly see if we can make that happen.
Absolutely. I'm just going to add. I just want to add quickly.
Yeah, go.
You did mention that we're not going to pay for the cards, but if we do end up picking up a sponsor, someone can sponsor this segment, and you can pay to track down other people's unicorns. So maybe one day, folks, Card Authority will be buying unicorns for people. We'll see what happens. Watch your space, and if you do want to sponsor our show, get involved. But on a more serious note, I do just want to mention that AJ has been the other AJ, not myself, has been very hard at work with the web developer for the last month, the better part of the last 4 weeks, getting everything beautiful for the cardauthority.com.au new website to make sure it's interactive and people can really get involved in the unicorn stuff as well there. So as AJ said, tomorrow the site will be fully updated and live. However, for those who are inquisitive, if you do want to take a look, you can see it is up right now.
No, I'm not finished.
There is a special preview. Most of it's, 90% of it's all right. It just needs a little bit of an update in the unicorn section. But everyone's going to be able to see every single unicorn that we've had listed and the successful chasers, the ones that have been hunted down and found, and what we're, of course, still looking for. And as AJ said earlier, there's an interactive form section now where you can fully submit all the information that we require to have your unicorn chase featured on the show as well. So big credit, and here's a big round of applause for Andrew Jeffries, AJ1 over there, because he is older than I am, slightly. But well done, AJ, the unicorn thing once again, and taking it to a new level with a new website. And thanks for your support, everyone. Look forward to seeing your hits.
Yeah, thank you. And look, obviously, it'll look good, and didn't want to release it until tomorrow, so thanks for that, AJ. But obviously, look, a lot of time's been put into it, and you'll be able to watch all the shows. Video plays embedded, and you can listen to it, and there's all the links and all the things you need to do to get in touch with us. And there's a few other things going on at Card Authority HQ, which, watch this space. But look, obviously you touched on about looking for sponsors. I really think Beacon Lighting would be really handy to come on board to give you a little bit more light in your office. And thankfully the Gremlins haven't come tonight, so that's been a huge result.
Well, that's it. It's the new vibe. It's the new vibe. No Gremlins. Somehow I've gone further away from my router, but the connection got better. So we're just on fire here.
Oh, that's what happens in, deep, dark downtown Glen Iris, where it's a real questionable kind of wiring. Anyway, let's straighten up a little bit. Look, obviously we'll be back next week. As we mentioned, we really do want to cover some things about grading and NBA and cricket, all those things, which we will do over the next couple of weeks. As always, make sure you get in touch with us if you've got any questions or there's a card you need us to look for. We're always here to help, whether we put it on the show or if we don't, we're always around. And this is what it's about, is trying to get the cards in people's collections. So, feel free to hit us up and we'll certainly see what we can do. I think that's pretty much everything for today. It's been a bit of a refreshing change that we haven't gone for 6.5 hours for once.
Yeah, and I can definitely tell by looking at your eyes down the screen here that the endone that you've been taking to sort your back out is really starting to wear off now. So I think it's probably best we get you out of that chair, get you drugged up again and back to bed is the go. So well done, AJ. You really pulled it together tonight. I'm very impressed. We said you could probably only get away with 45 minutes and we've doubled it. So well done.
Thank you. Well, I'm a team player. We got through it. But, on that note, I think it's a good time to sign off, and thank you, everyone. And as always, Jenks, you've been amazing.
And you too, AJ. And as I said, everyone, make sure you check out the website, www.cardauthority.com.au. Card Authority, episode 11, which is what you're watching right now, will be available on all relevant services. Check out the website for all the details. All the links are there. Feel free to click through. See you later. Good evening.
Wow. Good night. Bye.
Cool.